저선주왕 방송입니다.
This is your YPT travel update with John McGovern. While most of us still live in a varying state of being restricted to our home, city or country, the world of travel to destinations your mother would rather you stay away from is slowly opening up. Group tours of different nationalities are hard for us to organise at the moment, but the one destination which we are running at the moment is Iraqi Kurdistan. We have one tour there in March, which coincides with the Newroz Festival, and another in May. But many countries are now open to independent travel for solo, couples or groups. In Africa, YPT are now running independent tours to Somaliland, Sudan, South Sudan, Mauritania, Burkina Faso and Mali. In Mali, unfortunately, Dogon country remains strictly off limits to tourism because of the security situation. Stay tuned for updates there. In Europe, we're running tours to Belarus and Albania and can also run tours for EU citizens in various Eastern European countries. In Central Asia, Kyrgyzstan and Afghanistan are now open for tours, and in South Asia, we can run tours in Nepal. YPT have scheduled cruises in October in the Svalbard archipelago and in December in Antarctica. Last-minute places are still available. We expect that these tours will require proof of a COVID vaccine, and we will have more exciting news on its way about cruises soon. The situation is rapidly changing, and with vaccine rollouts all around the world now, we hope there is light at the end of the COVID tunnel appearing. We will add more destinations to our independent tour list as and when they open, and start up group tours again as fast as it is safe to do so. As always, write to tours@youngpioneertours.com for more information about any destination.
Welcome to the Pioneer Podcast. If you're familiar with us, you'll know that the first half is free, so everyone can listen. And then the second half is behind the paywall, and that's where we get all juicy. Today, I'm going to be talking to travel legend Dean Karalekas, author of The Men in No Man's Land, a book about the amazing place that is Tawil. And I'm joined, as always, by legendary Justin Martell. So, hello, Justin, and hello, Dean.
Hello. Hello. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. So, Dean, how do we know each other?
So, I took the YPT tour to DPRK back in 2014. Now, we didn't meet on that trip, but that sort of introduced me to the company, and I was very impressed with the company. Obviously, I started looking for more tours to do, and excuse me. I was looking for more tours to do, and it's always a pleasure to hang out with you guys. Whenever you guys do a tour, you have the right attitude. You like to have fun. You keep it safe. You keep it interesting. Go to all the best places, the out-of-the-way places that other tour companies won't take you to. But it's always a good time. It's always a lot of fun. I like a beer on occasion, and I think that's the order of the day. And the DPRK tour.
I think you were on. I think we were talking earlier, and you mentioned you were on the Kim Il Sung birthday tour.
Right, the Kim Il Sung birthday tour. So the Kim Il Sung birthday tour was it just sort of the schedule worked out for me and a couple of friends of mine, and they happened to have birthdays on or about the same day as Kim Il Sung. So I remember asking. Sorry, go ahead.
I said, "Ooh, that's a big deal."
I think so. I think that maybe factored in to their approving our request. When I made a little request to our guides, they said, "Could we do something special?" I remember reading about this Pyongyang gun club. Can we go to the gun club? And they said, "Well, we can check into it." But by the next day, they said, "Yeah, we got authorization. We'll bring you to the gun club." So it's just such a neat experience to see all the kids out there in their little uniforms, shooting targets, and it's a family affair. You could buy beer. They tell you beer and guns don't mix, but I guess in some cases they do. And you can shoot either targets or chickens. They have everything for whatever your taste.
Did you kill a chicken?
I didn't kill a chicken.
Why not?
I figured discharging a weapon in the Hermit Kingdom was pretty much macho enough for me for the day. I didn't have to kill a small animal, but maybe next time.
I believe they were capitalist chickens, so it would have been fine.
There you go.
It's funny. I recall on my first trip. I'm not sure if we went to the same place, but we went to the sports complex in Pyongyang where you could shoot at chickens. And we had a mini revolt on the bus. There were some vegetarians and some other people who thought it was in very poor taste to be shooting at chickens or potentially kill the chicken. So we actually had some people who refused to get off the bus and go into the sports complex because of that. But then I will say it was actually all very tasteful. We had a guy who shot a chicken, and he gave it to the bus driver, who took it home and cooked it and ate it. So, I don't think there's really anything bad that can be.
My worst experience there in that respect was, again, we had similar. We had a guy from PETA, however you want to pronounce it. And one guy basically grazed the chicken, didn't even shoot the chicken, kind of grazed its arm. And the gun club were like, yep, you got it. And it was outside, and it was just still alive. And there was just a huge debate on somebody trying to kill it. So a Danish guy wrung its neck, and it still wasn't dead. And the absolute highlight was when a Finnish guy went and got a rock, came back with a rock, and everybody just jumped in and went, no! and the bus driver put it under the bus.
I think it was a Danish guy who shot the chicken on my thing. On my trip.
Yeah, it was funny enough. It was a Danish guy that actually shot the chicken on my one as well. But I mean, he literally grazed it. The chicken's like, no, I'm fine. I can fight. I'll live to fight another day. And they were like, nah. You been got, chicken. And they put it under the bus, and nobody ever spoke about it again. But we had a proper PETA guy who was not a fan of any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, so always fun at the gun club. It's good that we all three of us have that one in common. Okay, so but when did we meet? We didn't meet on that trip, did we, Dean?
We didn't meet on that trip, so we would have met in Transnistria. I guess Chisinau before going into Transnistria would have been.
And for our listeners,
yes,
guys, and now I think most people listening to a YPT podcast would be familiar, but what is Transnistria, Dean? In your words, how would you describe it?
If I had to describe it, I'd say it's a little bit of a time machine throwback to the good old days of the Soviet Union. So you had and correct me if I'm wrong here, Gaz, but you had Romania, and then Moldova broke off of Romania. They said, okay, we've had enough. We want our own country. And then Transnistria broke off of Moldova and said, we want our own country, and we want that country to still be Soviet. So it's still technically, as far as I know, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, it's still technically the only Soviet country still on the map with the hammer and sickle on the flag, the whole schmear.
Well, interestingly as well, so when we talk about divided countries, obviously that's a big thing for YPT, it's a big thing for all of us. When Moldova first got independence from the USSR, there was serious talk about them uniting with Romania because they're the same ethnicity, they're the same language, etc. Although they've now changed it and said their language is Moldovan, but it's Romanian for all intents and purposes. And then they kind of 10 years went by and they went, you know what, we're kind of just different now. Let's stay different countries. So it's interesting, if Korea ever gets down that path, if they'll unite, or they'll say, you know what, it's been a while. I think we're kind of different. A bit like, Taiwan and China. Not that we want to go down that rabbit hole, but we will talk about Taiwan later, I'm sure.
Well, absolutely. I lived there long enough.
You did. So we'll definitely talk about Taiwan. So you're a very well-travelled guy. Like I said, we met in Transnistria, we've met in Cuba, and then I think 2 years ago we met in Sudan.
Has it been 2 years? It doesn't feel like 2 years.
But I think a year and a half. It was September.
I guess so.
Of 2019. So yeah, a year and a half, mate.
This past year hasn't even felt like a year. It's like we've been on hold. It shouldn't even count as a year. But yeah, so it would have been in late September or was it October, November? Anyway, Sudan. That was a very interesting trip, and I guess we'll get to that a little bit more of that a little later on. But
yeah.
Yeah, speaking of chickens, did we ever figure out what goes into a chicken machine?
We did not figure that out. We did not figure that out. I've always wondered.
I thought that'd be a great recipe. You're cooking with Christopher Walken. We're making chicken machine here. Get yourself a chicken. I don't care how. Hunt it down, kill it, or just make a machine for yo.
Wow, that's good. That's impressive.
I was wondering how long into the interview before you did an impression of someone.
It's how much.
So there are more. So there's more. There's not just Christopher Walken.
There's lots. We're gonna do the Emperor from Star Wars at some point, because that is my favourite impression that you do. Just get it out of the way.
That depends on how much beer gets into me. So
yeah, and for those, if you hear some clinking around, we are listening to some. We are not listening. See, I've already had to. We're drinking some Qingdao. Do you need another one? Oh, no,
I'm okay for now. Thank you, sir.
Right, so I'll leave this here.
I've got a coconut. I'm drinking a coconut because it's in the morning here. But I'll probably actually. Do you know what? I'm gonna have a drink. Why not? It's night there. Okay, so Dean, we met in Sudan. Obviously, we're going to get more into this in the second part of the interview, but I understand you wrote a book.
Well, again, yeah, that was about the Sudan. That was about our little excursion out to Bir Tawil to claim some terra nullius, and about the people we met over there. And that was to keep a promise to the people we met out there, to get their story out to the big wide world, and let the world know sort of what the real situation is. You look at a map or you look at Wikipedia, you do a little bit of research, and you might think that it's terra nullius, no one's there, population zero, let me go and plant my flag, which is kind of what we were thinking. And and lo and behold, not exactly the case. So that was the genesis of the book. And it's not, again, I'm not really a very good writer when it comes to that type of writing. It was my first foray into that sort of narrative writing. But so far we got some good reviews. People seem to have enjoyed it. And so hopefully people like it. And we've got our French edition just out now, thanks to Pierre.
Yes, we do. We have a French edition. And I'm fairly sure Justin will make sure that we've got links in the bio so that anyone that's interested in buying the book can buy the book. So, Dean, you're a very well-travelled man. We'll get the pissing contest out of the way. How many countries have you been to?
Well, if I had to guess, I'd say around 50. I don't... a gentleman doesn't count.
I agree.
Is my take
absolutely
on it.
agree. I certainly don't count. If I was to count, it would be roughly 156.
Well, see, there you go. There you go.
Roughly. I mean, I don't count. Justin, do you count?
I do on occasion, such as this one, and I will say actually I'm exactly at 50 if we're going by the YPT rules of counting countries. So that would include some unrecognized countries.
The unrecognized countries, I think, are some of the more fun countries. Those are the best. Those are the ones you really want to go to.
They certainly are, and you know what?
Was it living in Taiwan that got you sort of interested in that subject?
Yeah, well, one of my interests, sort of on the academic side, is on nation building, and so how the Taiwanese sort of build their nation as separate, their identity separate from the Chinese identity, and that goes into a nation. The idea of nationhood among a people, which helps to gel the community together. And so one thing I learned about, another one of the trips I took with YPT was to Iraqi Kurdistan. And so they essentially have their own nation, a very well-functioning nation over there too. And in this case, and I've looked in Kosovo and Transnistria and places like this for parallels, and I didn't really find any, but in Kurdistan I found some very interesting parallels in the way they sort of brought their nation into being with the way the Taiwanese have been trying to do the same thing. And both of them have been trying to do the same thing. Obviously some big differences there, but basically, and I'm working on a paper on that topic right now, so I won't give too many spoilers away, but it is a very interesting process that nations go through, that communities go through, in order to see themselves as a community. Even though, so like I could meet another Canadian that I'd never met before. I mean, there's like 35 million of us, but we'd still have these same stories, narratives, ideas, values, and we'd still talk hockey. And these are all the things that we all know makes us Canadian. And in cases like Taiwan, like Kurdistan, other places, it could even be fabricated. It could be imagined, what they call an imagined community. It could be completely fabricated. But if your narrative story of your country is accepted and it works its way into the cultural narrative, it becomes this cultural moment for your people. You've built an identity that you can build a country around after that. And again, sorry, I don't mean to blab on, but I found it interesting that, so in Kurdistan, in the Treaty of Sèvres, right after World War I, when they were thinking, and the people who basically carved up these former empires, the Ottoman Empire and the Habsburg Empire, and they said, okay, we had this terribly destructive war. Why? Because empires are completely multicultural. They're not monoethnic. And it's unrealistic to have a central control over all of this. And so every ethnicity should have its own nationality. And so the Syrians got a country, and the Turks got Turkey, the Iraqis, the Iranians, and according to the treaty, so did the Kurds. That, of course, didn't last very long because there was a renegotiation, and as a result, they were split up between these 4 other countries. But they still see themselves as as a community, and therefore they're still working towards nationhood. Sorry to ramble on. I just find that stuff really interesting.
These are the things we want to explore on this podcast. So this is exactly what these are the rabbit holes we want to go down.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Now, I guess, do you have any strong opinions either way on, any of these unrecognized countries or partially recognized countries, say such as Northern Cyprus, on which might be in a better position or have a better case to be recognized as a sovereign nation over others? Do you have any strong opinions on any of that either way?
I try not to. I try to sort of be the scientist about it and watch it without getting emotionally involved in it. It's hard when sort of my wife is Taiwanese, so of course I care about Taiwan, and having lived there for so long. And also I'm from Quebec. I'm from Montreal. And Quebec, on a couple of occasions in the past, as your listeners probably know, they've had a referendum about whether or not they want to become their own country. And I don't think there are any hard and fast rules. I know that whenever something like this comes up, the commentary, it starts to write articles frantically drawing parallels between this independence movement here and that independence movement there, and why we shouldn't support this because we'd have to support that. I don't necessarily agree with that, because every country is different, every community is different, every situation is different. So, yeah, long answer short, no, I don't really have strong feelings about it. Each case has to be taken on its own merits, I think.
Well, I'm disappointed I didn't wear my Kosovo is Serbian shirt that I bought on my last trip to Belgrade.
that we definitely don't wear in Albania. Or Kosovo.
That I don't have the balls to wear in Kosovo or in Albania or Macedonia.
Yeah. But it's interesting to go on to this subject, because what you said about we should recognise this one, not that one. They did actually call it the Kosovo precedent. That was what Russia and everyone was so angry about. And that was why Russia recognised Abkhazia and South Ossetia. And Justin, you'll like this one. Nauru happened to get, I think it was a $40 million loan from Russia, and in an unrelated incident recognised South Ossetia and Abkhazia the next day.
Amazing. Oh, what? So do they have embassies in Nauru?
They don't have embassies, but Nauru recognises Abkhazia and South Ossetia.
And now you must, and that's fascinating. And Dean, you must have seen when you were in Transnistria, the Abkhazia and South Ossetia, the sort of diplomatic street where there are those those two embassies.
It was great. Yeah. It was restaurant, embassy, restaurant, embassy. It was great.
Yeah.
And I think we went into one of those restaurants and had a couple of vodkas, if I remember correctly.
Oh, I think we went
As you do.
as one does, but yeah, but it's very interesting rabbit hole to go down. Again, so we're talking about unrecognised countries, divided countries. You lived in Korea.
Yeah, so I lived in the first country I lived in outside of Canada. I mean, after I got my bachelor's degree, and no one would hire me except for a security company, so I worked as a sort of a mobile security guard for about a year and a half, and then got a chance to go teach in South Korea, which again every Canadian at the time was doing, either Korea or Japan, because the job situation in Canada was what it was. And so I taught in a little town called Kurishi. At the time it was a little town, but I hear that these days it's built up into a really big sort of suburb of Seoul. It took us about 45 minutes to bus and subway to get into Seoul on the weekend. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, the Korean food, as you guys know, the Korean food is incredible. I just absolutely love the Korean food, the cuisine. The people were super friendly. It was, and it was my first taste of living overseas, and I was there for about a year before going to Mongolia. And my boss at the time was he said, okay, you've done your year contract. I'll buy you a ticket back to Vancouver. I said, don't do that. Get me a ticket to Ulaanbaatar. I'll go to Mongolia. And that was something, especially in the 90s. That was really, really interesting. It was a little bit of a panic for me, the inexperienced traveler at the time. Why did I do this to myself? But really friendly people there. You know, there was a bar we all drank at, and anyone who was new, because no tourist ever went. So whenever someone was new, they'd take them under their wing, and they said, "Oh, okay, let's show you around. Let's show you what life is like here." I met a couple of guys that said, "Yeah, we're going to the Gobi Desert tomorrow for a week or 10 days. We rented a little Jeep. Come with us. We'll split the cost. You know, just over beers." And so went out to the Gobi Desert, drove around the desert, staying in gers. They would just sort of show up. We'd drive up to a rancher's ger, and they would say, "Oh my goodness, foreigners! Yes, of course you can sleep in our home tonight. Please come in. We will drink vodka, tell stories." It was a hoot. It was an experience.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'd like to get your perspective on Korea. Like, seeing as you lived in the south and you visited the north, like, what are the similarities? What are the differences? What's your take on things? Without getting too political, obviously.
Yeah, well, things have changed since I've been there. I haven't been back for any real length of time since the 90s. And back then, the students were protesting. They still had the protest season.
I think they're still protesting.
Oh yeah, so every protest season, the students would be out, and there would be the smell of tear gas in the air. And but back then, they were protesting for unification. From what I understand, these days they're protesting against unification. So the situation does change. The situation is fluid, but of course, these are young people, and every generation sort of rebels against the previous one. So whatever, you know, the anti-establishment becomes the establishment, and then that sort of flip-flops back and forth with the generations. And the last month or so I was there, there was a North Korean sub that had washed up on the shore, and they had caught 2 or 3 of the sailors, but the rest of them were somewhere in the countryside. They were somewhere out there. And so there was this huge dragnet throughout the entire country. People on the street corners with guns, protecting their neighborhood.
Wow.
It was the whole nation seemed sort of given over to this cause of finding these spies. There were posters in the subways back then, I remember. I remember one specifically was a chameleon, and it had red eyes, and just a tip of a tail was red. And I asked my Korean friend, "What does that mean?" He says, "Oh, that means be on the lookout for spies. They may look like us, but there are ways you can tell." And that was just the day-to-day life back then.
Because communists have a red tail.
Because communists have a red tail, yes.
I'm just looking behind myself at the moment. I can't see one, but okay, I'm good. I guess I'm not communist, really.
Your tail's not red.
Yeah, no red tail. Okay, so of all your travels, what's the best country you've been to? I know that's a very hard question, but it's one we have to ask.
Is that a necessary question? Wow, I can't even think. I mean,
It's a tough one, but it's a good one to think about. I mean, again, like for myself, I give a few answers usually, but what's been the place that, I guess you could look at it two ways. What's been the best trip, singularly, that you've done? And what's one country that you could just go back to and back to and back to?
I think I could go back. I could go back to Czech Republic again and again. I think the first time I went, it was just awful. I was there for an academic conference. Nothing seemed to go right. But then I went back again a couple of years later and just had the time to see it, and it was fantastic. But I really got to give a shout out to Budapest. My wife and I lived there for a couple of years just before moving here to New York, in fact, and I just absolutely just incredible. The people are wonderful. The expat community there was very, very outgoing and very accepting, and I made a lot of friends there that I'm still friends with today. And just the lifestyle there is even compared to New York. I know New York is the best city in the world and the city that never lets me sleep. But
that's a great way of describing it. Yeah,
but we miss Budapest. My wife and I both miss Budapest very much. And being in Budapest, you can. Stop me if I've said this, but you can hop over. So hop over to Ukraine for $100 on a Ryanair or something, and go see Chernobyl, or pop up to England and visit some friends, or and then the embassy staff over there would. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or get someone in trouble. I'm sure they won't hear this podcast, but they would get me to drive whenever they'd have to go visit Serbia. We'd fly to Bosnia, that's a little farther, and Kosovo and Montenegro, but it's just a short drive to Serbia. So,
I was gonna jump in and say you brought up the Czech Republic. I watched, and I would recommend to you guys. I watched an interesting documentary this past week, the new Frank Zappa documentary by Alex Winter, and Gaz, maybe you know this. I don't know, it's a little bit of trivia, but like before the U.S. when the Czech Republic broke off from the Soviet Union. Correct me now if I'm wrong, because I don't know how familiar I am with this particular piece of history. But before America significantly engaged the Czech Republic, Frank Zappa went over there to play some concerts, and he met with the president and he met with Parliament. And for a period of time, he was actually the Czech Republic's representative here in the U.S., representing business affairs and things of that nature. And at the time, this was during the Bush 1 administration, so a Republican, sort of conservative administration. I guess basically what you could consider the tail end of the Reagan era. And when the U.S. started engaging the Czech Republic, they told the president, by the way, if you want to have any significant dealings with us, you're going to have to get rid of Frank Zappa. But I thought that was pretty interesting. Did you know about that, guys?
I did not. That's a new one for me.
Yeah, check that out. Be a good blog.
I think so. So if you have to, it's really funny you said Budapest, because I only spent one day there, but it was literally one of my least favourite places I've ever been. I think I was having a bad day.
But that can happen. Like I said, my first time in Prague, it did not make me want to go back. But I have some friends there, mostly people I had met here and there in other countries, and I had some time to go take a visit, and it really redeemed itself in my eyes. Fantastic.
Okay, so if there's a best, there's a worst, but we'll word it better. So I'll tell you my one. Is there a country that you've been to that you're like, yeah, I've been, it's done, I don't need to go back? For me, it's Haiti. Nothing against Haiti, lovely place, but I've been, I don't need to go back. Yeah.
I loved Haiti. I was in Haiti for the first time this year.
Yeah. I thought that might get you going.
Yeah,
I know you absolutely love the place, and you've written some very great stuff about it. I'd just say your stuff that you wrote for us on Haiti, which we'll maybe share in the bio as well. It's really very interesting.
I hope people liked it, because I really enjoyed Haiti, and I can understand though where you're coming from, because it doesn't really have a very strong tourist infrastructure. It's hard to get around there. It's so in your face as far as just people trying to live their lives in the slums. I got arrested. I mean, so had to talk my way out of that one. That's never fun, and that's the only time that's ever happened to me. And it was in Haiti. But I met some wonderful people there. I hired a guy I sort of got in touch with online, and we're still friends. You know, we still text back and forth. Asda, he runs tours out there, and he made sure that I saw all the stuff I wanted to see. I mean, my first day there, he had arranged for me to attend a voodoo ceremony. Not one of these things, okay, you come and sit in a nightclub and order a drink, voodoo ceremony, and we'll put on a show for you, but a small neighborhood voodoo temple, and they had this ceremony already planned that was going on, and they just sort of put up with my presence. Incredible experience. And since I've been back and in doing the research to write the story that I wrote for you, I've just started delving into their belief system and the laws and all of the sort of gods and how they work and how they interact with how the people interact with them. And it's that I think I really want to go back. I really want to go back to Haiti. I don't know if I could pick a country I don't want to go back to unless it's Canada, you know, just because I like to travel and Canada's home, and it doesn't feel like you're traveling if you're in Canada. But then that looks bad on Canada, so I retract what I just said.
Okay, you can have a neutral answer. I noticed when you were talking about Haiti, you said felt your presence. They felt your presence. So is it time now for you to do your Emperor Palpatine impression?
Oh man,
let
me try and I'll try and think of a good time to work it in. I just Emperor Palpatine.
That's my favourite. That's one of the main things I remember about our Transnistria trip, and I'm not going to do a poor version of your impression, but I just whenever I think about it, I remember you doing Emperor Palpatine and me saying to you, "That's a really good impression," and you're like, "He was a dick. Emperor Palpatine was a dick."
The only thing I can think of is the one the Family Guy with something dark side. and he was kind of a dick because, you know, he was talking to Luke, right? He was like, "Oh, I'm afraid your pitiful little band will be destroyed." You know, he's like a high school bully. It wasn't even, you know, emperor-wise. It wasn't very emperor-ish.
No, he was a dick, you're right. There's no other way to put it. So, if you've got this far, we are now at the end of the free version. If you would like to continue listening, you can join our subscription service. It costs as little as about 10 cents per day or 15 cents per day. It's absolutely nothing. You can join us on ypt.life or hopefully in the link in the bio as well. So we're going to carry on now. Goodbye and welcome. So, Dean, we're going to get all juicy with you now. I'm going to ask all the questions you don't want me to ask, or maybe you do want me to ask, who knows. So, the last time we met was in Sudan.
Indeed.
Now, I remember I planned that trip, and I planned it to go to Tawil. And when I first planned it, some of my business partners were not so pro it. They were saying, "Oh, this isn't the kind of thing that people will book. This is just for travel geeks." To which I thought, and I replied, "We are for travel geeks." So there was, why would you book it? And again, I understand because I planned it, but what a lot of people would say, and when I tell people about stuff, why the hell would you book a trip to Tawil? You weirdo.
Yeah, it's an odd thing. My real interest, I gotta be honest, it was the pyramids of Meroe. I had always wanted to see these pyramids, and again, because of the nature of your audience, I'm sure your listeners know what they are. But in case anyone doesn't, it's a pyramid complex in Sudan that has like 10 times as many pyramids as Egypt. Now they're much smaller, of course. They're not reaching to the sky. They're not the Great Pyramid of Cheops there. But it's just such a beautiful and incredible complex. The pictures that I had seen of it were just so gorgeous. And I saw that on this trip, it's going up there. So my main reason for taking it was this. Now, having said that, after seeing the pyramids, then the tour carries on to the only terra nullius still, the only real terra nullius still on Earth. How could you not want to do that? How could you not want to set foot there?
And for our listeners, what is a terra nullius?
Oh, sorry, a terra nullius. Yeah, no man's land. It's the kind of thing. So it's the kind of thing that in the age of exploration, Magellan and all of these guys that were go on their ships and just find these islands and continents that, granted, sometimes they were populated, but they would just claim them in the name of Spain, and they would expand the empire just by planting a flag and finding parts of the earth that weren't yet explored. And I think if you're a traveler, especially if you're a YPT traveler and you really do enjoy going sort of off the beaten path, then you have a little romantic notion about those days, about real exploration and seeing and going to places that no one has ever gone to before. And those, because of the time we live in, those are precious few. And as we learned, Bir Tawil wasn't necessarily a terra nullius, but for all intents and purposes, and as far as the outside world knew, that's what it was. That's what it still is on the map.
I think I would completely agree with you. I think that's what makes North Korea so special.
Exactly.
Is it's just so different. It's one of the last, you're not seeing a McDonald's, you're not seeing a KFC and a Starbucks. I mean, you can go to every city in the UK, and it's like being in the same place, same shop, same everything, same bars now even. So that's what makes North Korea special. And again, I absolutely agree that that's what makes, or what made Bir Tawil so special was, it really was out there. What was your impression on Sudan in general? Because we got there just after they'd kind of had a revolution, didn't we?
Yeah, so they still are trying to sort of erase some of the mistakes of the past as far as governance goes, and I think they're being generally successful with it. From what I've been reading in the papers, it's tough. It's not an easy job for them to do after decades of dictatorship. Corruption is hard to root out, and democracy. Once they eventually have a full-fledged democracy is a whole process. You don't just overnight. But once they do democratize, and I have faith that they will, I think they're in a good position to really build a good home for themselves. The way that Kurdistan has, for example, as we were talking about earlier, I see an effort there and a desire to this. I mean, you remember everyone was so friendly with us. I never hardly ever felt afraid, right?
Hardly,
except for the incident, but. No, people were friendly no matter where we were, in whatever city. They said, be careful in that market. But the markets were generally, if anyone knew any English, they'd see us and they'd want to converse with us just to practice their English and to show that they had a little bit. That was few and far between, of course, but just a smile and a friendly word and, a hand on the heart, as I say in the book. And that's the icebreaker, intercultural icebreaker.
And they've legalized alcohol now.
Oh, we went too early.
I know. I'm still, I'm a little bit disappointed about that. That was my one failure. We didn't get any beer whilst we were there. Non-alcoholic beer. That was actually quite good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was all right. When in Rome, but the one YPT tour with no alcohol, I never thought I'd see it.
Yeah, just a bunch of guys pooping in the desert.
Yes. Yeah,
some pooping more and some pooping less.
We did become close on that trip.
We certainly did. So, tell us about Bir Tawil. What happened?
Well, the trip up was difficult. We had 5 4x4s we started off with.
Yes, we started off with.
We started off with 5, but after a couple of days, so after Abu Hamad, right? I want to say Abu Hamad.
Yep.
There's no more roads, so it just turns into desert. So we're driving over the desert, and at one point we lost a couple of our 4x4s and had to consolidate everyone into the remaining 3. Fortunately, we had a couple of drivers who could take the other 2 back to Mad Max Town there and get it fixed. But so the rest of the trip and when we finally did cross into Bir Tawil, it was nice to get out of the cramped cars, and it was a beautiful sunset. It was actually perfect. It was absolutely gorgeous because we crossed in. We knew we'd crossed in because we had the GPSs going. Not that there's any landmarks. There's certainly no border or anything like that. Just desert to same desert. But just an incredible sunset. And it just seemed, everything just seemed right with the world at that point, didn't it?
It certainly did. So I want to go back because you made a sort of throwaway comment that I understand, but obviously our listeners won't understand. Even Justin won't understand. What the hell was Mad Max Town?
Mad Max Town. Yeah, it kind of
which we all called it. I think we all literally called it that. I think almost the same time. But yeah, just explain to us what Mad Max Town was.
Yeah, it looked like you'd expect to see the Tina Turner from Thunderdome coming around the corner.
So who was Tina Turner? Who was Master? And who was Blaster? And who was Mel Gibson? You were maybe Mel Gibson.
But I knew Tina Turner runs what is it? Thunderdome.
Bartertown.
That's the one. Bartertown.
Yeah.
It kind of looked like Bartertown, but it was way less populated. And it was a way station, I guess. So they would be bringing employees back from the gold mines and employees up into the gold mines, and they would be moving gas and gold and other equipment and gassing up there. There was one small little tuck shop, right? That we drank all of his cold pop.
I was just going to mention him because he spoke fluent English.
Yes, he spoke very good English. It was great to meet him.
Yeah, and it was just so hot. Yeah, we just sat just necking cold drinks, didn't we? Non-alcoholic ones, but cold drinks nonetheless.
Take what we can get. Yeah. So it was an interesting little way station. And fortunately, when the trucks did break down, we weren't too far ahead. We weren't too far away from Mad Max Town. So Shady, who was our driver at the time, I think we were in the same car, right, with Shady?
We were in the same car because it was a smoking car.
There you go. And Shady was fantastic. In fact, I wish Shady had been with us when we got to Bir Tawil because he was a Babda. He could have helped us to negotiate.
He could. There's a lot of hindsight there. It would be great to have him there.
Now, why did Shady not continue on to?
Well, we had to send the cars back, and the car we were in was one of the ones that broke down. So what they had done was, it's really hard to get gas over there. So you have to buy it off the black market, or you have to buy it from some, no pun intended, shady places. And at one point, we gassed up. We filled up some large barrels with diesel. And they didn't clean out this one barrel quite well enough so that it foiled the filter on our vehicle, which is what I think happened there. And then they tried changing the filter. They tried flushing it. We didn't have any compressed air, so they could have blown it out with some compressed air, but we didn't have any of that with us. I mean, we're out in it's literally just like desert, nothing for miles around, but, just sand, and for 5 4x4s and a bunch of silly foreigners.
Could you repeat that in a Christopher Walken voice? Because it sounded like you were going there for a moment.
So we're in the desert, nothing around, nowhere, just silly foreigners. We're here for you.
I remember, one of the funniest things about that point of the trip, I remember, because we were there about 5 hours, right?
Yeah.
In the desert, waiting for them to fix the cars,
yeah.
Which wasn't particularly fun. But I remember actually seeing mirages.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I thought it wasn't... I never knew that it was a real thing. I've just seen it in cartoons, pretty much. But you do look in the distance, and you can see, like, lakes and rivers and stuff.
I know, it's amazing. It really was the experience. It was... It could potentially have been scary. I think if anyone would have panicked, not just at during the incident, but at any point up, it could have been dangerous. But everyone kept their head. Everyone had a good attitude. I think you whether it was coincidental, we picked, or we had just a great group of guys and the right group of guys to be.
I think yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think generally a trip like that attracts a certain kind of person. Again, like when I've told people about it, they're like, Bertawil, why the hell would you go there? It's like, well, you get it or you don't get it.
Exactly.
And I think it attracts the kind of people that are prepared for stuff to go wrong, essentially. And you have to remember, we talk these crazy places that we go to. We're not doing package trips to Spain. If you go to Spain and you end up stuck in a desert for 5 hours, you might be annoyed.
Yeah, you would. I remember how
or heavily
upset.
armed Bedouin tribes.
I remember how upset I was on the way back when we were supposed to get a hotel room, I think maybe in Abu Hamad, and it turns out we couldn't. And again, everyone was cool about it, and I was cool about it, but what I was hiding was, oh man, I wanted a shower. I've been looking forward to the shower for days. But okay, no, as the Marines say, embrace the suck. We'll get through it. And I think everybody had.
I remember trying to arrange that hotel, and it was just a nightmare. And then we camped out again that night. Yeah, that was. I'd forgotten about that.
Now, what happened to it? Was it just not? Was it full? Was there no vacancy, or was it just you couldn't stay there?
It was a bit of both. So there was. It was a very, very, very small Sudanese town. So there's a North Korean-y kind of element where tourists can only stay in certain hotels. And the one certain hotel literally only had 4 rooms.
We were probably more comfortable in the desert anyway that night.
That night, I mean, we slept in a very nice part of desert, didn't we, if I remember correctly? And it was kind of, with hindsight, obviously we got a shower and we went to eat a Gaddafi egg later. Which again, that was quite the highlight. But with hindsight, it was kind of nice to have one last night camping. It was the last time I camped, anyway.
Yeah, me too.
And I will say, obviously I wasn't there, but I did see the pictures. And in addition to you guys going to Bartertown or Mad Max Town, you guys also certainly looked the part. You guys had like a Mad Max steampunk kind of look going on, at least in the pictures I saw.
Me and Dean were particularly ones that embraced that. There's a lot of pictures of me and Dean. I bought a dagger, which was connected to my arm. We had the hats. We fully embraced. We fully embraced life, didn't we? And we were pooping in the desert, which was fun.
In for a penny, in for a pound. You got to go in. You got to go in all the way. I agree. Those daggers were great, by the way. I put them up on my wall. They're just so beautiful. Those were the traditional tribal Ababda daggers that they wear, and I remember we had them on our belts until we ran into there was just this old truck came by, and the guy started talking to us and said, "Wow, what are all these crazy white guys doing in the desert?" And they saw the knives on our belts, and they said, "That's not how you wear those things. You got to put that on your arm." And if I remember right, I looked at you and you looked at me and I thought, "Wearing a knife on your arm? That is cool. That is the epitome of cool." And so we put them on our arms. We got our picture taken there. I think that's the picture on the back of the book, right?
It's the picture on the back of the book.
Yeah,
we are looking pretty damn good. And we're very well tanned as well, which is nice. Okay, so let's get back on track. You went to Bertawil. You started waving about flags. So everything went okay after that, I guess. Yeah,
more or less. Well, yeah. So I don't know how much you've done in previous podcasts about the island project. The Let's Buy an Island.
No, we've not really touched on that.
Yeah, we haven't gone deep into that. I think we've discussed it
because this fits into that. So whenever I tell the story, and people always want to hear the story, but that's part of the reason. It was part of the PR for going to going because we want to go, but you folded that in nicely with the effort to also promote the island project, which was a crowd-funded island, and the establishment of a micronation. And if you have a nation,
which has now been purchased off the coast of Belize.
Yes, may I jump in there? www.letsbuyanireland.com. You can own a part of a Caribbean island. Jump on it, have a look.
Buy now.
Buy now.
So this sort of worked into that project and that effort. So let's go and let's plant the flag of Islandia. Is it Islandia or Islandia?
No, you can say it as you like.
I like Islandia, but that's I have to do the pronunciation that the locals do, and expand our territory just as they did in the old days. I mean, it was a great throwback, and it was just such a fun idea, and also sort of to make fun of the people who were doing it, who had gone to Beer to Will. So this one gentleman, I think in 2011 or 2012, from the States, another guy a couple of years later from India, and another guy from Russia. Except they were taking it way too seriously. I mean, they were pressing their claims in the international courts, whereas we were kind of doing that.
We were a bit more tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, we were sort of doing a little bit of parody what they were doing, but also having fun with it, as you do, as you want to do, because life is too short not to. And so let's go there and claim this land. And that's what we were doing when this truck of heavily armed Bedouins arrived and said, "Hey, what's going on here?" You remember that?
I do remember that. I want to go back to what you were saying about other people that claimed Bear to Will, because the initial guy, the original guy that claimed it, said that he did it to make his daughter a princess. So you listen to that story and you're like, wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then we contacted him after and were like, hey, how's it going? And he basically replied, you've trespassed on my land. And he said he was going to get Saudi mercenaries and he was going to go and take it by force. And it was like, much like Emperor Palpatine. It turns out he's a bit of a dick.
You will not go to Beer Tawil, boy.
Something.
Wait, hang on a second. So this guy, where does that guy live? Here
in America,
in the
States, U.S.,
in the States,
and so he's like basically he established or laid claim to
what did he call it? Kingdom of
North Sudan. So it's a shit name as well.
And now, when do you feel the last time he's actually been to this patch of
10 years ago or something?
Did he only go once?
Ridiculously long ago.
And now he lords over it and makes threats. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, listen, I have a lot of respect for anybody who doubles down. So maybe he tripled down. I like that.
He did. But there was
again, if anyone wants to Google Bear to Will, one of the top results you'll get is a Young Pioneer Tours blog where we talk about all the different people that have claimed Bear to Will, and they are a weird bunch. We're literally the only people that have gone there and not claimed it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we met with the locals, didn't we? We learned the situation.
So as you say, a heavily armed truck arrived, and what happened next?
Yeah, so they insisted on escorting us to the main town, Beer to Will town, for lack of a better name. Now, just before that, I don't know if we were in the same truck again this time, but remember we hit that rock in the 4x4 that I was in. And then the engine started pinging as we were moving. We could drive slowly, but the crankcase was bent, and it sounded like the piston rods were hitting it on every revolution. So something was going wrong there, and there was no way we were driving another, I don't know how many 100 miles or whatever back to Abu Hamad, or at least to Mad Max Town to get that fixed. So we were in a little bit of a pickle already. And there was no way we could just sort of leave the truck and consolidate everyone into two. That was just because we had lost the previous two from 5, now we're down to 3. To go down to 2 is not practical. But again, no one panicked. And we ran into these gentlemen with their guns. They insisted we follow them to Beer to Will Town to meet the chiefs who would decide what to do with us. And at that point, we were guests of the Ababda. Now, I did some research when I got back. The Ababda have pretty much they're a nomad group. They've pretty much been in this area, this part of the desert, since the Romans were there. probably well before that, but this was the first mention of them back in the Roman times. And there's pretty much no doubt that in any court of law, and again, this is one of the, before I wrote the book, this is how, when you talked to me about this, thank you, sir, was because I had been writing this, I had been trying to keep our promise to tell the story of the Ababda by writing an academic article. This is what I know, is what I do, and but this isn't really my field, so I was having trouble putting together this article that gave the international law and the international legal mechanisms, especially when it comes to land rights, mineral rights, and aboriginal rights to territory, and try to make a case that it belongs to the Ababda. And that has since been published, I'm happy to say. Whether that ever does them any good or helps them in any way, I don't know. I hope so. But then the book also, I think, will help sort of just more the layman to understand their story. And so, where was I? So they were taking us to meet the chiefs, so that the chiefs would decide what to do with us. And the chiefs weren't there, of course, so we had to wait, and we weren't going anywhere until the chiefs got there.
And so what was the vibe like in Bertowil Town versus Mad Max Town? Because it almost feels like we're getting into I mean, if Mad Max Town was middle of nowhere, I mean, what was Bertowil Town like?
So Bertowil Town was actually, there were more people in Bertowil Town because it was more of a settlement. There's workers there. It wasn't just a way station so much as a place where it's gold mining that's happening up there. Is what's happening, right? They're extracting gold, large operations, and so the people who they bring in to work these operations have to have a place to live. They have a couple of small restaurants built out of corrugated iron, roofing material. A couple of little small shops, which fortunately sold some cold drinks, pops, and not much else. There was a little. I think there was a money changer. You could send money wire it back to your family at home for the workers. But
were the workers all Sudanese, or were they?
From what I understand, they're mostly Sudanese. Some from South Sudan, maybe.
I think a lot of them, if you remember, they were much darker skinned than our Ababda friends.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of them were from Darfur.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some of them came as far as Darfur, from what I read. Again, it's a tough job. It's hard work, and it's potentially poisonous working with the chemicals that it takes to extract the gold from the ore. But I guess it's good work if you can get it. And they work for however long they work, maybe a couple of months, and then they send them back and they replace them. But this is where they would live. This is where they'd be based, in Bertowil Town. So there's no reason foreigners should have been there. There's no godly reason that foreigners should have been there, unless we were like this guy from the States trying to claim their land for his daughter, or we were from a mining company, which I've since found out that is just operating just over on the Sudan side, on the other side of the border to Bertowil.
And there are foreigners there.
It's Canadian. It's a Canadian operation. And so they were understandably cautious about, are these guys mining, scouts, come to see our operation and maybe take us over and take our livelihood away. So I can understand why they were upset with our presence, especially not having... Awad was translating for us. He was trying to get our point across. But I can understand how they wouldn't believe that, yeah, sure, tourists. Yeah, sure, these guys came out here because they want to take pictures and visit the desert. What kind of idiot do you think I am to believe that? What kind of idiot would they be to do that?
Yeah.
Again, you go into an interesting point. I remember being in Transnistria, and, there was a group of us and a car stopping, and the guy spoke English, and he started chatting to us, and he found out we were tourists, and he was just like, why are you here?
Yeah.
Why would you come here? So, I mean, again, we go to these weird and wonderful places, but, it's for locals. Again, like you say, these guys are going up and doing grueling work for 2 months, 3 months at a time. So they do look at it and go, why would you come? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you want to come and look at this?
If you're going to have a cover story, make it a believable cover story.
Yeah.
So I mean, was there a point that you guys were scared? Or, I mean, like what?
Yes.
I mean, again, you had a group of people who you kind of knew what you were potentially getting into, maybe understood the risks, but were you scared?
It was difficult.
Would you say a video moment?
The video moment made me scared. Before I get to the video moment, though, it was tense because not only did the truck not work, and we all knew the truck didn't work, and I don't know if everyone else had sort of thought through the fact that we couldn't get back in 2 trucks. We couldn't make a break for it because there's no way that we'd all scramble into a truck and drive away like the Dukes of Hazzard. That's not going to happen. So we're not driving out of here right now. The truck didn't work, and also one of our guys was kind of sick. He had heat stroke, I guess, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So he wasn't going to make it in a bouncy cab for another half day. So we kind of had to stay put for him as well. This is why when I tell the story, I maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I like to say what happened for the best, because not only during our captivity did they feed us, and give us cold drinks.
How was the food?
The food was good. The food was all right. Yeah.
What are we talking?
It was pretty good. They
chicken,
killed a goat for us.
Before they killed a goat for us before we left, and they cooked that up very nicely.
Okay.
But during that time, they kept us comfortable. They gave us a place to stay in the restaurant. Some of the guys did not move from that table in the restaurant. So I think everyone, if you were to talk to them, they would have a different answer to this question. Myself, I was more sort of worried about, is Steven going to be okay? So make sure he gets a lot of fluids. Talk to the guys and see if anyone has, what are they called, electrolyte tabs. And fixing the truck. So Mohammed, our other driver, was working with their mechanic to fix our truck during the time that we were all waiting for the chiefs to arrive, waiting for them to decide what are they going to do with us.
And did they say anything about the previous people who had come out there trying to lay claim to the space?
They certainly did. They literally referred to the guy with who declared his daughter a princess. They called him that idiot in America.
The what?
That idiot in America.
Are you?
That could refer to any number of people.
that could. But in this context, they were talking about that idiot online from America. So they were very much talking about the Kingdom of North Sudan when they were talking about that. Idiot.
So they had,
and again,
they had seen his writings.
And he was an idiot.
They had heard about it. Did they have internet out there? I mean, what was?
I didn't see anything like that. I didn't see anything like that.
Just generators, like for
generators. I mean, the town was pretty stocked up. They had satellite phones, which were to prove useful later on in the story, which Dean will get to.
I got a message from you at some point. I don't remember. I don't know at what point during this whole saga I got the message, but you just said, you sort of sent me a message and you said, "I'll get back to you in a bit. Held hostage in Sudan. Don't worry though, it'll be okay. I'll fill you in later."
Which is just the message you want from a mate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I mean, thankfully, once we got to that stage, I was a bit more chilled out about stuff. So we'll carry on, Dean. We're getting to the video point, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so the Chiefs, okay, so we've got all these things to deal with, make sure everybody is calm, and Peter did a great job. Well, I mean, both you guys did an awesome job keeping everybody from panicking, and the guys, like I said, I think they were well chosen, or just had the right disposition. They didn't panic. Tensions were high, sure, but people were nervous, sure, but there was no craziness happening. And once we realized the Chiefs weren't going to make it that evening, we said, okay, we'll go bed down for the night. and when they do arrive up from Abu Hamad, we'll negotiate with them, which happened in the morning. And I don't know if you want me to skip right to the morning, but that's when we did finally meet.
Well, did something happen at night?
No, not that I recall. Just
But we were still held under guard. I mean, we went out and camped, but they visibly made their guns and presence known.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were like, yeah, you can go and camp, but you are not leaving.
so they camped. They had some guards camped nearby to make sure that we didn't go anywhere. Not like we're going to go anywhere. Where are we? Like it's hundreds of miles of desert in every direction. So at any rate, they had their guys to make sure with their guns to make sure we weren't going anyplace. So in the morning, when the chiefs did arrive, and it was a very pomp and circumstance, they had their, traditional garb and the headdress and very regal, and they were the old chiefs and the young chiefs. The young chiefs were a little bit more, maybe wanted to make an example out of us.
Yeah.
And they lined up. We met each of them, and then they started, "What the hell are you doing here?" And then Awad, who was our main guide, was negotiating with them. And of course, the whole thing was conducted in Arabic, so I didn't understand a word. I don't think any of us did. But he was fantastic. He was tough when he had to be tough. He was emphatic. He made our case for us. And they said, "All right, we're going to go and retire and talk about your situation and make a decision on what we're going to do with you. And you can go have breakfast or whatever." So we went our way, they went their way.
Now, when you say decide what to do with you,
Yeah.
and you say that the younger ones maybe wanted to make example of you, what are we talking here? Are we talking like you get shot? Are we talking you get whipped? Are you talking you got to pay a sum of money to get out of it? Like, what do we...
We didn't know.
So this
Go ahead.
is where it gets. We certainly didn't know, but I mean, I've been in hairy situations in my life before, and I remember going up to Awad, our guy, and sort of saying like, "Look, is there a monetary sum? Can we pay our way out of this?" And him just looking at me and saying, "They've got gold mines. they what are you going to give them?" Sort of thing. And me thinking, but the one positive point about that, which I felt throughout this after hearing that, was these were guys that didn't want anyone messing with their gold mine. So I honestly was never that nervous in that respect. The last thing they wanted was a bunch of dead foreigners, in my mind, anyway.
I was thinking the same thing. At first, I thought it was money, just like you say, because you're just so used to hearing that about kidnap gangs, or bona fide political movements that just degenerate into kidnap gangs. But once Awad sort of said, no, these guys are rich, they don't need ransom money. Then it was a little bit of a weight off my shoulder.
I thought at one stage they might even just accept keeping me there, for example, and letting people go. I was thinking of all Plan B, Plan C, Plan D as we were going along, but
you're a better man than I am. I hadn't thought of that. That didn't even. We were all getting out of there.
Never leave a man behind.
I'm pretty sure everyone would have changed their mind if they said you can go and only Gareth has to say.
See you, Gareth.
People would have gone, yeah, you can leave the man behind sometimes.
Bye then.
Bye then. See you on the flip side. I was not looking forward to living in Mad Max Town. Living in Burton Wheel Town. Mad Max Town would have been beautiful in comparison.
Yeah, no, that was it was tense. So that negotiation was tense.
How long did they deliberate for?
Was it an hour, a couple of hours?
It was a couple of hours, and during that time, I politely told Awad that it was time to get on the sat phone.
And okay, and based on what you said about you think that some of the younger chiefs wanted to make an example, what do you think that what do you think that discussion was like? I mean, and let's not be hyperbolic. Let's say like in a realistic sense, what do you think that discussion was like while they were deliberating?
I really don't know what they thought. I think they were angry. They were working from emotions, and I think the older chiefs were just trying to keep a level head. Because they're older. Because it's
That's what the older chiefs do.
That's why we have older chiefs.
Yes.
I think that they just wanted to get their frustrations out, which is why they shot at us at one point. They were walking back to their area, we were walking back to ours. I heard a shot.
It was the sound of a...
What was it? What's that line?
It's the sound of an AK-47. It's very distinctive when shot at you. The preferred weapon of your enemy.
So I heard the shot of the AK-47, and then I heard another one, and then another one. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to dive for cover. I'm not going to start running. I'm not going to scramble. I'm not going to give them satisfaction. I'm just going to keep my pace and keep walking the same pace. Because I figured, and I hoped, that they were just, counting coup. They were just making a show of how tough they are. And
so you didn't actually see them though when they shot. So you don't know.
Just heard it.
So you don't know if they shot into the air, if they shot.
I didn't know. Assume they shot in the air.
Right.
So I just heard the shots. I think I don't remember what other people were doing because I just had blinders on at this point. I just remember thinking, okay, I'm just going to keep walking. I heard a shot. I heard another shot, and then the third. Just going to keep walking at the same pace. Not change my pace. We're not affected by this. You and your shooting didn't affect us. Now, if they were actually shooting at us, that would have been the wrong call. But it didn't make sense to me at that point that they would start shooting at us. It didn't make sense.
I think this was where kind of the tribal element came in as well, because it's almost like a royal family. They're not elected. The tribal leaders aren't elected, and you kind of had these young hotheads that were trying to make their claim for power, in a sense.
Maybe.
Well, it might have been the most exciting thing that had happened in a while.
I'm sure they're still talking about it. We are.
Yeah, exactly. And I must say, Gareth, I mean, this is the most detail I have personally heard about this. And Gareth, we've seen each other several times since you've been here. So I don't know whether to be worried, about whether these things are just becoming more normal or...
I think, it's just another day at the office for me in a sense. I don't know. It was again. This is why it's so good to talk about it with Dean, because there's certain things that you just forget, and it's when you talk to somebody who went through it with you, you get to kind of relive it a little bit more.
It's true. There's some. Like I said, I'm sure I would love to get together with the whole gang and just sort of get their take on it after a year, 2 years, 3 years. Maybe we can do a reunion or something, because everybody
somewhere safer.
Different things.
We go to Spain or something.
But so they went their way. They talked. They discussed.
Yeah, and so going back to my question, what do you think what do you think they said?
I think they probably. I don't know. I don't think killing us would have got them anywhere.
But do you think that was on the table?
I imagine it was. I mean, what if they were afraid that we were going to go back and spill the beans about their location there? But then, the whoever the miners, the Canadian mining company working just across the border would know what's going on in Tawil as far as the mining goes. The government would know, I'm sure. It's not super secret. It was a big operation. Trucks going in and out. People talk. People hired to go in. So it's not like it's a secret that's let out.
Again, I think one thing that people misunderstand as well is, and we certainly misunderstood, is that whilst Tawil is unclaimed, it is in reality that Sudanese trucks going in, Sudanese workers. It's technically unclaimed, but somebody's paying somebody something somewhere.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. So it's the situation. You're in an area where there is no military, and technically the military may or may not be able to go in, except there's certainly no military posted there. There's no police posted there. There's nothing there. So might has right. Whoever has the guns is pretty much in charge, and they had the guns.
They
What
certainly
kinds of
did.
guns? I'm going to keep asking questions. What kinds of guns? Anything bigger than an AK-47
Well,
or what?
yes, they were. They were. So Joel would be the one, the expert on this. I can't remember the exact name of the guns, but they weren't AK-47s. They were the brand new Russian assault rifles. So they had better guns than the Sudanese military had.
They had better guns than the military.
Yeah.
Why am I
No,
not
these
surprised?
were apparently. There's a good photo of me wearing it. Or holding one of the guns, but according to our gun experts, these were like real deal stuff, really good guns.
There you go. When you got the gold, you got the guns.
Anything bigger than that? Anything bigger than assault rifles? Or
I think one guy had a sniper rifle.
Yeah. There was a couple of sniper rifles, a couple of assault rifles, machine guns. I mean, these were, and apparently, again, according to our military expert, there's Russians are selling a lot of guns in this arena.
Okay. So what happened? What happened next?
Oh, we had breakfast, had some coffee, waited for our fate to be made clear
So
to us.
did you have an appetite or what? I mean,
I
what was
needed
going
the
through your
coffee.
head?
I needed the coffee. I don't know. Gad, do you remember what was the general feeling?
I can remember this quite well. So basically, they came back and they said you can go.
Well,
So there was a lot.
before they said you can go, though, before they said, okay, you can go, or at least before Awad translated that to us, they said, okay, line up and look into the camera and give us your name and your country. And at this point, they hadn't told us we could go. At this point, this was the point I was worried. So whatever had happened before this, I was like, all right, it's just a situation. We're just going to have to deal with it the best we can. At this point, I thought, okay, now we're toast. Because
It was an Al-Qaeda style video.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looked like.
It was
looked
an
like an
ISIS
Al-Qaeda video.
Yeah.
And or at least what it felt like to me that they were prepping for. So that's the point at which I was starting to that I got a little bit okay. Well, maybe we're not going to make it out of this. But within minutes of some back and forth, Awad had translated for us. Okay, the chiefs say they were very sorry for holding you here. You of course can go. We hope you will stay and have a meal with us before you do. We apologize for the shooting. It was very embarrassing for us. So, yeah, so
Oh, okay. So they acknowledged the shooting.
they did, right?
Yeah.
I seem to remember that.
They did. They absolutely did. But this was when. So this was where the atmosphere, kind of in some respects, was the most difficult for some of the group anyway, because they said we could go, so people were happy about that.
Yeah.
But then we had to go to Tawil town. One, because they wanted to give us food, because that was a cultural thing to do.
Yeah.
But two, we needed to fix the truck and get gas.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, they were like, we don't want to go back there. But funnily enough, what broke the ice, we were back there. It was very tense. And then I walked up to an elderly man with an assault rifle and said, hey, can I hold that? And then within 10 minutes, we were all having selfies with guns.
Yeah, there was even some dancing, some clapping. Once the tension was broken, we were all friends all of a sudden. It was it just like that. It was incredible and very gratifying to see.
Yep, it certainly was. It certainly was. And then we left.
And then we left, and then we headed on the long road back. And reflected upon our experience. I was lucky enough to be sitting next to Awad on one of the trucks on the way back, and I asked him, what happened and who are these people? And he explained to me they're the Ababda tribe and gave me their name. I made a few notes about our conversation that worked their way into the book later on. And I couldn't get a hold of him. I really wanted him to see like an early copy of the draft to get his take on it, but I was never able to get a hold of him. I hope that he's happy with what we've come up with in that book, and I hope that they're happy ultimately, because who knows, we might end up wanting to go back there. And if for whatever reason they don't like what we wrote in the book, But I hope that the book...
Another negotiation.
Yeah, another very tense negotiation. We need a sequel. But I'm hoping that we made good on our promise to tell the story about Bir Tawil and the Ababda being having sovereignty over this land. It's not an empty land. You can't just go and claim it. I don't care if your daughter wants to be a princess. It belongs to us, and that's what I tried to get across in the book.
And I think you again. Let's plug the book again, because you did exactly make that point, and it's very well put across in the book. I will add. So anyone, if you really want the whole story, the rest of the story, you definitely got to get the book.
Yeah, that was my next question. So I have to assume there's some details that maybe you've left, that you omitted in this interview, that maybe are in the book, or
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, the book,
or probably just some more background context,
Yeah.
where we are exactly. Yeah.
the broad strokes. We got the broad strokes in this interview. The book, the Men in No Man's Land, A Journey into Bir Tawil. It's on Amazon. Buy it. Buy now. But wait,
And it
that's not all you get.
and it was.
Sorry, go ahead.
And it was, I was going to say, I remember thinking, oh, it's just a bunch of guys. Oh, there's no females on the trip. But then later on thinking, it's probably best there were no females on this trip.
Now, what are you saying, Gareth? Well, that's fascinating. Honestly, Gareth, we've spent a lot of time together. We've been to some pretty interesting places. We've been in some pretty hairy situations. But but honestly, that was riveting for me to hear. I'd never heard the story of that in that much detail.
It was, again, I'm extremely well travelled, but this is probably the most intense situation I've been in. Would you agree, Dean?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I'm glad I was there with you, buddy.
Yeah, I'm glad you were there too. And we worked out that we were the two least attractive, so the last ones that were going to make wives as well.
There you go. I knew there had to be an upside to looking this way.
Exactly. Thank God for beards. So one last point. So we get back to Khartoum, and they wanted to apologise to us about getting kidnapped, which was nice of them. And then, how did we spend our last night?
You're talking about the Gaddafi's egg.
Yes, Gaddafi's egg.
Yeah, Gaddafi's egg, fantastic. Yeah, I guess they kind of felt bad that we ended up getting taken captive and everything.
Who's they?
Oh, they was the local tour operator that had supplied the guides and the trucks and everything like that. They did
Is it ultimately a government run thing, or?
I don't think so. They're a private company, right?
They're private, but it's there's not so many of them, so they're kind of hand in glove with government, which was
Fair enough.
proved to our benefit.
I have to say, I held them in no way responsible for that. I don't, they could never foreseen that. They couldn't have, done anything. They handled themselves well. Mohammed, who was fixing the engine, did a fantastic job. Awad especially deserves a medal for his negotiating tactics. Honestly, they all handled themselves really, really well in that situation. As much as our guys did, they were fantastic. They took care of us, and I hope they don't feel that we were upset with them in any way. But for whatever reason, they said, "Oh, we feel really bad." Well, so we're happy to pick up the tab for a nice dinner for you guys over at the fanciest restaurant in town, and it's this big literally an egg-shaped skyscraper that back when Sudan's biggest ally and patron really was the Gaddafi regime in Libya, and he paid for it, so hence Gaddafi's egg. And one of the restaurants, they had a few restaurants in there, but the big famous one, I don't remember the name of the restaurant now. Do you remember the name of the restaurant?
I do not.
It's in the book. I looked it up. I just don't have it on the tip of my tongue. Fantastic, incredible food. I'm glad that we had an hour maybe or what it was in the hotel to take 2 showers. Actually, I needed 2 showers after that many days in the desert to get all the sand. Even after we left there, a week later, I was in Hyderabad in India, and I was still pouring Sahara out of my shoe. It was just there was so much sand. But we had spiffied ourselves up. We went to the restaurant, and they fed us really well. I mean, it was an incredible meal. So that was their way of saying, sorry guys. But it was a very nice gesture.
Now, I've heard with the change of government now, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I think with the change of government now, there's alcohol in Sudan. Maybe you guys just missed out.
There is alcohol in Sudan. There wasn't at the time, and it was. We were about 6 months before alcohol was a thing. But one of the weirdest things was in this Gaddafi hotel. It was obviously built. There was a bar down there. There was a sports bar, but it was not selling any alcohol. I mean, for all intents, it was like an international hotel.
Yeah.
It had every trappings. I mean, it was ready to have a bar. It was ready to be. It had like a little nightclub area. I mean, it was ready to be open. You know.
That sports bar on the first floor, when we walked in, we passed by the sports bar, and I was just magnetically pulled into it. After what we'd been through, like no beer tastes better than a beer after a hard day's work, right? And after what we had been through, I would just have throttled the closest person if I were promised a cold beer. But it was like you said, a mirage of a bar. It looked like a bar. There was no beer. There was no alcohol.
Yeah, we had to deal with non-alcoholic beer. But okay, all right. So Dean, thank you very much for sharing your story with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's been wonderful having you. It's been wonderful. It looks like you guys have had fun there anyway, which is brilliant. And yeah, great talking to you. We'll keep plugging the book, and I can't wait to meet you somewhere in this big small world again.
Who knows where it'll be?
Okay, so I'm Gareth Johnson. Thank you for listening to today's Pioneer podcast. We're going to be back very, very soon, talking to other great people who like to travel to places your mother would rather you stayed away from. If you'd like to subscribe, you can subscribe for as little as 10 to 15 cents per day. Less than a cup of coffee per month, and that is what we would love you to do. You can do that on YPT Life or by following the link in the bio. Thanks, and see you soon.